Welcome to the inaugural episode from SCY Studios. My name is Jeff Slagle, and I'm the Chief Business Development Officer and President at Skitalis. And I am absolutely delighted. It took a long time to get to this particular moment where we're actually launching the show. And this is going to be something that's a little bit different than some of the other content that is out there. Our aim here at SCY Studios isn't just to have a shameless marketing vehicle that will allow for us to talk about how great our products, how great our solutions are, even though our products are fantastic. Really what we're trying to do is create an environment where thought leaders and other people that are immersed in the electronic identification community can come together to talk about issues, to talk about challenges, to see how we can continue to pool resources as we work together towards common goals, which tend to ultimately be summarized in just an expression of secure credentials for you. People are committed to making sure that the things that they're doing in the identification world ultimately help to provide secure credentials for you. This has been a long time in the coming. We have a number of very interesting episodes that we've got planned in the coming days, things that we believe are going to be very interesting and are going to continue to help the dialogue inside of the community. But we could not think of a better way of kicking off our new show without bringing in one of the absolute, undoubtedly one of the biggest leaders in the world when it comes to electronic identification and secure identification efforts in general, than AAMVA. And so I am super pleased that our very first guest here at SCY Studios is none other than Mr. Ian Grossman. Ian is the sitting Vice President of Member Services and Public Affairs at AAMVA, has a very distinguished history of work within the public safety community. I know from things that I've read on his bio that he is a graduate of the American University in Washington, D.C. He's held jobs inside the federal government in the U.S. Department of Transportation, where he was actually an SES, held the title as an associate administrator inside of one of the DOT agencies responsible for commercial vehicle and commercial driver activity. He has successfully worked on and run political campaigns. I believe he's also dabbled in amateur moose racing. We're going to have to ask him about that. And then for the last 12 years, Ian has been an executive helping to lead things inside of an association. And I'd like to go ahead and bring him in so that he can actually add a little bit to the intro. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome my friend and our first official guest, Ian.
Thank you. Happy to be here. It's quite an honor to be the first of something.
Yeah, it's pretty darn exciting, I have to say. We really do appreciate you taking time from what is a very busy schedule. We know that right now, an irony in this pandemic world that we're living in is that people are busier, and they've just been able to take on more and to work harder because they're not traveling, they're not commuting, and let's face it, we're all living in our office, and so it's incredibly easy for us to just go ahead and kind of stay locked in. But if you can, for the benefit of our audience, can you say a word or two about who AAMVA is and what you all are doing in the association?
Sure. So for those that aren't familiar with the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators, at the core, we are the association that represents the interests of motor vehicle agencies and law enforcement agencies throughout the United States and Canada, all of North America. More specifically, in those DMVs and law enforcement agencies, we're working with those officials, as well as the private sector that supports those officials, on all the transactions and responsibilities of those agencies, whether that is driver licensing and identity credentialing, vehicle registration and titling, on the road highway safety law enforcement, enforcing those motor vehicle laws and the work that our brave law enforcement men and women do every day. And our role as the association is to provide them the tools and resources they need to more effectively do their job. And that could come in the form of best practices, standards, model legislation. We also provide the forum for them to connect with each other. It's through AAMVA that heads of motor vehicle agencies and their teams and law enforcement agencies can get together, learn from each other, build relationships with people that have their role in another jurisdiction, all with the ultimate goal of uniformity, reciprocity, and more practically not having to reinvent the wheel in every jurisdiction so that they can trade what's working and what's not working. At the same time, that part of our connecting them to each other is a very literal connection in that AAMVA runs a network infrastructure, commonly referred to as the AAMVAnet, that allows our members, particularly in the United States, to connect to each other and to the U.S. federal government for any number of transactions that they may be doing at a DMV counter, whether that is to verify certain credentials, to help verify identity, to exchange titling information, the list goes on and on. But the key is AAMVA provides that network infrastructure that enables those agencies to do those transactions. So I think, Jeff, at a 10,000 foot level of what is AAMVA, that's probably the best summary I could give you without having everybody sit through my very exciting but 1 hour long briefing on everything AAMVA does.
Yeah, I've heard about that one. I believe the title is "Yeah, We Do That," and quite frankly, you do a lot. The width and breadth of the programs that AAMVA is involved in is absolutely significant, and this is helpful because this is an international audience that we have with the work that SCY Studios is hoping to be able to represent and the dialogues that are going to continue. And one of the other things that we've discovered is common challenges. So our guess is, and you probably can testify to this, that the challenges and the work that are happening in North America are not unique to North America. And they probably are very, very similar when you start talking to neighbors across the pond, whether we're talking about Europe or we're talking about Australia or Asia or Africa or wherever. That, there's some really, common threads. So not to be completely preoccupied with the topic of identification, but identification is really, really important. And I'm guessing that a lot of the work that AAMVA is involved in and that its members are involved in, kind of the success of those efforts hinge on your ability to do identification and to do it well.
Absolutely. And it's not a new topic for our members. The history of the driver's license, of course, in North America, and I appreciate you reminding me of the global audience, in North America, the driver's license, came about at the early part of the 20th century when vehicles were hitting the roads. And early on, New York City was the first jurisdiction to say, hey, we better make sure that there's some sort of legal credential for this person to operate a motor vehicle. Fast forward, almost 100 years later, maybe a little bit less, you start seeing the driver's license as the de facto primary form of identification throughout North America. And in that, DMVs who issue these credentials really doubled down and invested in the identification vetting process when issuing that driver's license, because they understood and appreciated that the driver's license was more than the legal authority to operate a motor vehicle, but that people were using it in an everyday manner to prove they are who they say they are. And as a result, the DMV process evolved and grew to making sure that person was who they say they are when they were issuing that credential. And so now in the 21st century, as we evolve into the digital identity space, it may be new techniques, new approaches, new technology enhancements, but at the core, it's what DMVs have been doing now for decades, which is making sure a person is who they say they are when they get their credential.
Yes, and you guys have done an excellent job. There's no question that within the last couple of decades, those that have worked in and around the topic of identification security have seen all of the gains that have happened. And I also know that it's a team effort. So not just the talented folks that you have on your team and the staff at an association like AAMVA, but then all of your members that you lean into so heavily. And I always loved hearing that AAMVA was a member-led and a member-driven organization and community, and to see how everybody comes together, because let's face it, everybody is in the same boat. Everybody is very much affected and impacted by what's going on. So as you were talking about the history of the driver's license, one of the things that kind of gets me excited is thinking about the evolution and how there have been those incremental, movements of improvement where, as you were saying, way back at the very, very beginnings, we were talking about essentially a piece of paper that eventually became more than just a piece of paper, and as more identifiable information made its way onto it, we end up in a situation today where I dare say most people are interested in a driver's license, not so much because of evidence of privilege to drive, but more because it's dependable ID.
I think when you say people interested in it, if you meaning the people that rely on let me see your driver's license,
yes,
then yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think most people need the credential for both the driving authority and the identification authority. But the reality is, and I would imagine anybody watching this, both of them watching us, right, Jeff? That people that are watching, hopefully the last time they pulled their driver's license out of their wallet was not to show an officer at roadside that they're legally responsible to drive the vehicle, but they probably used it somewhere to show they are who they say they are. And perhaps in today's world, they were doing some sort of curbside delivery pickup where someone says, show me your identification so I know this is your delivery that I can put in the trunk in the car, or any other type of scenario you can think of. I think that's absolutely right, that when someone's using their driver's license day in and day out, it's to show their identity.
Yes, that certainly would line up with at least things that I've experienced, what I've observed in the work that I've been involved in, and where I kind of believe things will continue to kind of go. And so it's interesting. I do think that one of the things that we were hoping to accomplish with the launch of SCY Studios was to help educate people. And again, this isn't so much you'll have to forgive the expression, but widgets are sort of universally always held up as the quintessential example of a product or a service that someone is trying to sell. So I really genuinely am not trying to say, oh, hey, we're the ones with the best widgets. We may in fact be the ones with the best widgets, but that's really not what SCY Studios is committed to. We're really committed to helping have the conversation around, is this the right direction? Because there have been many examples throughout time where people have been very exuberant and very excited to work on technology. And while they were solving some issues with their technology, they were maybe unintentionally creating new issues. And so I think that the big we, organizations like AAMVA and standards bodies and industry and the dependent entities, whether they're commercial, whether they're private, whatever, we're best served if we work together. And I don't think that anybody ever reaches a point where they know everything that there is to know about everything. And so I'm confident that there will be people that will tune in to hear this conversation and be very interested in the dialogue that we're having. And they're kind of starting at the very, very bottom. They don't necessarily have the benefit that you have, that I have, from years of exposure to this kind of work. So what are things that AAMVA is kind of doing with regards to trying to get the word out and to get the message to average citizens on things that may impact them, that could be of interest and could be of value?
Sure. Well, I think in the identity space, obviously, globally and at AAMVA, there's a lot of conversation around technology developments, particularly mobile driver's licenses. And so we've been spending a lot of time the past few years on developing exactly those things you've been talking about. What are the standards? What are the agreed upon approaches? Regardless of which widget you choose, what features should all the widgets have in common? And then you can figure out what the best widget is. And so as we've been doing that, there's been a focus even more recently on let's really tell that story on what is a mobile driver's license. We throw around this term of mDL or digital ID. At the end of the day, no matter what you call it, we want to be on the same page in terms of what it is and how it works. And so one of the things we've recently done is created an educational video that hopefully will tell this story to all audiences, whether you are in the business, like you say, those that are more familiar, or perhaps you are a stakeholder within a jurisdiction or industry that has heard this term thrown around and you really don't know what it means. And so we've tried to do that with an educational video that at the same time is, again, not specific to the widget, right? Any widget may solve this challenge, but we have to talk about the story about what it is we're trying to do. And we've created this educational video to try to tell that story.
You know what? And just by coincidence, I happen to have access to this very video that you're talking about.
Wow.
And so I would love to go ahead. And I think at this point, I'm going to cue this thing up and play it
That's great.
For the folks that are watching. So here we go.
Meet friends Sophie and Zeke. They're meeting up to go on a much-needed vacation. Both have packed their bags and have their tickets ready. But Sophie is bringing something along on the trip that Zeke isn't. A mobile driver's license, or mDL. Zeke only has a physical credential. Oh, Zeke. mDL is a driver's license that is provisioned to a mobile device and allows the holder to safely and securely share their person and license demographics electronically, resulting in a completely touch-free transaction. mDL can be updated in real time and allows the holder to share minimal data needed for the transaction. Let's see it in action. Sophie and Zeke head to the airport to get their vacation underway. But oops, speeding is not okay, even when you're excited. Sophie shares her mDL with the officer. She doesn't need to touch it or handle it in any way to verify her information, which is all kept up to date without her having to visit the DMV. Zeke hands over his driver's license to the officer. Uh-oh, Zeke failed to get a new license after getting laser vision correction. Zeke heads off to the airport with 2 tickets, one for speeding and one for not wearing his corrective lenses. At security, Sophie uses her mDL as her ID. The TSA officer knows the mDL technology is trustable. Sophie sails through. Zeke, however, is not so lucky. The officer must determine whether his license is genuine by looking for security features on the card. Hurry, Zeke. Our travelers arrive at their destination. Next stop, rental car. Zeke presents his driver's license to the agent. In comparing the photo to the man, the agent isn't convinced and refuses to accept Zeke's license. It appears that Zeke has changed his style a bit since the time his card was issued. Don't worry, Sophie can save the day. With mDL, only she can access her license. Our friends arrive at the hotel and head to the bar for a celebratory drink. The bartender can quickly and easily verify Sophie is over 21, so it's party time. Zeke orders and hands over his physical license, which offers way more information that is needed for this transaction. Looks like Zeke has a new pen pal, whether he wants one or not. Yikes. Well, both of our travelers have gotten a good night's sleep and they're headed to the theme park. They put their belongings into a locker, but oops, they didn't lock things up properly. Both Sophie's and Zeke's things have been stolen. It's a scary situation, but Sophie can have some peace of mind. Luckily, she still has her tablet. Since it's also a mobile device, she can use it to download the mDL app and provision her mDL. More importantly, the thief won't be able to use her mDL, as he's not Sophie. But for good measure, she also removes the mDL from her stolen device. As for Zeke, unfortunately, the thief can easily use Zeke's license to apply for a credit card. Bet Zeke is wishing he had an mDL too. Sophie can use her new mDL to get on a plane and head back home. And Zeke? Well, it won't be quite that easy. The world has changed a lot in the last 20 years. Isn't it time for driver's licenses and IDs to change as well? Mobile driver's license, the safe, secure, seamless, and reliable technology. It's the future of identification. And believe me, you don't want to be the one without one.
Wow, that was outstanding. That was fantastic. Well, congratulations. That is
Thank you.
really an awesome video. And there were a number of things that really came through quite clear. With the one that is so stark to me is why should I have to offer more information about myself than I need to? That's one of the biggest problems that we have. And right now, I think an irony in this pandemic situation that we find ourselves in is that there were all kinds of things done in order to get people online and working and doing certain things. And along the way, they just have let too much information out. So I believe we're going to look back, and it's going to take years for us to try to get our arms around exactly, how much fraud and how many problems were created. But it at least on the surface, it feels like that what you've done with your mDL work is to help really get things to where you don't want to have to give up more information than you absolutely have to. And the video does a really nice job of communicating that.
Well, that's great. I'm glad it comes across in the video. The idea of the user, the owner of that personal information, deciding what they want to give out each time they use it is a core principle of the mDL concept, and is also a good example of nobody is looking, or at least we're trying not to say mDL is not for the purpose of having a cool gadget in your wallet. Yes, it is cool, the idea of having it on your phone. The rest of your life is on your phone. Why not this be on your phone? All that's true. But at the end of the day, if all we've done is taken what we have in a physical card and made it electronic on a mobile device, then we've missed the opportunity to say, if we're going to do this, how do we improve identification? How do we improve privacy? How do we improve security? The physical card has served us extraordinarily well when that's what we had available. However, now that we have this new opportunity, let's not just do it because it's cool to have something on your phone, but let's say, what are the things we always wish we could have done, but we're restricted by the physical world? Now that we're not restricted by the physical world, how do we leverage that to actually make it a better product for citizens?
Wow, that's really a great point. I think, the video, at least to me, seems quite clear. This is a great way of educating a very large, diverse population, and for them, to sort of immediately grasp what it is that that you guys have been working on. What would you say are like next steps? Where do you see things going from here?
So I think the next step in this conversation is is we have a few parallel tracks happening, at least in North America. You have a number of jurisdictions that have stood up programs, some in pilot phases, some in full deployment phases. And we're learning a lot of lessons from these early programs. We're learning lessons on how well the technology works. We're learning lessons on user adoption and acceptance. We're learning lessons about who really wants to rely on it when someone wants to present it, as opposed to them saying, can you just give me the physical card? So that is going to continue to expand as more jurisdictions want to get into producing a mobile driver's license. At the same time, on the other parallel track, the next generation of the conversation is really starting to define the ecosystem that's going to support the interaction of these devices. Because one of the things we need to make sure of is we've learned the lessons over generations on how to make the physical card as interoperable as possible through things like the 2D barcode on the back and reciprocity between jurisdictions and uniformity in design. We need to keep those lessons in mind so that when jurisdictions are producing mDLs, the holders can use it in any jurisdiction, in any interaction, all those different transactions that were on the video. That will only happen if we can build the behind the curtain infrastructure to allow that. And for those that are more technical that are watching, we're talking about things like public key certificates and being able to pass those public key certificates in a secure and encrypted manner, and understanding what allows an issuer to be able to be part of that ecosystem and what standards do they need to meet so that they can receive a public key certificate. And so the next phase is sort of scoping out and defining what does that world look like? What is the infrastructure needed? What will it take to build it? Who should build it? Who should operate it? And how to make it sustainable over the years.
That's fantastic. Well, it sounds like you're absolutely dialed in on what needs to be done, and knowing the crew inside of the AAMVA community, you've got all the right resources and all the right players. I again, from my perspective, as a fan for the work that AAMVA has done and continues to do, I look forward to the improvements because I know for a very long time there were opportunities for things to be done differently, and there are practical limits to what can be done with a physical secure document. And I'm not at all hating on the physical secure document. So to the people that might be watching this and think that I have a position where I'm completely down on it, I think I came to a realization that we're just able to do some things electronically that can't be done with physical, but that also comes with its own challenges. And as I said earlier, in our rush to do certain things to help deliver value and to protect privacy and to increase security, if we're not careful, we can unintentionally create additional problems or additional challenges. And so I think it's really, really important that everybody continue to work together. And I, for one, am very at ease knowing that we have the solid leadership that we do, people like yourself. And so I really want to, again, from my heart, thank you for the great work that you're doing, for the great work that continues to be done by the community, and for taking time to join us on this very special occasion. In time, we're hoping to bring additional thought leaders on that are going to be talking about different aspects that affect the larger ecosystem. You use that term, ecosystem. And so I envision and I look forward to future episodes that highlight law enforcement's use of electronic ID and what it can do for them. And then the privacy aspects, that's very, very important. And everybody, I think, that has an interest in electronic identification is going to want to make sure that we're moving in concert with each other. and that privacy is front of mind and not, not just an afterthought. And I guess maybe the other thing that you said that I just want to kind of give a shout out to is the very important role that standards play. I have a little bit of a bias because of my background. I spent a few years working on standards, and so I'm delighted to hear that it sounds like that will continue to also be a really important ingredient in the recipe for everybody to move towards success with what they're doing. So,
Absolutely.
well, Ian, thank you again for the very generous use of your time. And if at all possible, and this experience wasn't a disaster, I would love to have you back in a future show, a future episode, to maybe provide an update with how things are going there at AAMVA.
I would love to do that. I know there's going to be lots of developments over the coming months. And whether it's to talk about that or to show you my moose racing saddles, whatever works, I'm happy to come back.
Fantastic. Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. And with that, I want to go ahead and say to the folks that are out there, we appreciate you stopping by, and certainly hope that you found some value and some of the conversation that I was able to have today with AAMVA interesting. Again, the commitment is we want to create a space where people can have relevant conversations on the topic of electronic ID. And so, again, thank you very much. Thanks to my guest, Ian, and thank you for tuning in. And hope that you have a great day as everybody continues to work to produce secure credentials for you. Have a good one.